Hey, hi everyone. Thank y'all for joining us for our Beef Brunch news update for Tuesday, September 20th. You get to see Lee and Vince's shining faces today as I'm on the road and Jason is out for vacation this week. But we'll go ahead and we're going to proceed as usual. I'm going to let Vince go on and do our update for Central and South Louisiana.
Thank y'all for having me. It's sunshine and hot this week, and I think we're going to reach some record temperatures, which is a good thing coming off of such a wet period we had 6 or 8 weeks ago. And our production farmers are out there harvesting soybeans and finishing up on the rice, and corn's pretty well done. A lot of field work going on. Sugarcane planting is going on, and by God, the hay that's being made the last 7 to 10 days is just remarkable. As Lee and I were visiting before we started recording, there was a scare of a shortage of hay moving into this fall feeding period and winter feeding period, and some of that has somewhat subsided as far as the concerns. I think everyone has pretty much been able to get out and get some hay cut and rolled up and put up. Whether the quality is going to be what we want, probably not, because we had a lot of overgrown hay, especially in South and Central Louisiana. But I think we'll meet our needs as far as the quantity. Quality may be off a little. Sale-born prices, I'm sure somebody on this talk is going to go over those numbers here for us. But here locally, there's still a lot of anticipation and a lot of hope moving forward. The calf prices have been pretty good. Some stuff moving off the farm and produces, netting over $1,000 for some 5 and 6 weight calves. You can't hardly bark at that much, but we start to look at some of our input costs moving into one of the most expensive parts of the time of the year. Naturally with cost of diesel, baling hay, and fertilizer inputs that we have into this hay crop, moving into our ryegrass at $40 for 50 pounds of ryegrass seed. The cost of planting ryegrass is, as I did the Beef Brunch webinar talk late last week, we estimated that it's going to cost per acre by the time you put pre-plant fertilizer and 2 shots of top dress, you're looking at $200 an acre ryegrass plus, depending on environmental conditions and what fertilizer is needed. So moving forward, with these hot, dry conditions as we move into the fall, Thursday being, the first day of fall, it's going to hardly seem like it in Central Louisiana. They're calling for 97, 98 degree temperatures. I hope that's short-lived, and the long-range forecast in about 10 days shows some 60-degree nights like we had last week, and hopefully that stands true. So horn flies of populations have exploded with these drier conditions. It's a good idea and good time to maybe charge some back rubs and get some things under control before a fall working. These cattle are pretty miserable. And in South Louisiana, we had the spike in mosquito populations, which it seems to has gotten a little better since the ground has dried out. After the rain quit 7 to 10, 12 days ago, that's always a big threat. It's kind of like hurricane season. Thank God we haven't had a hurricane, and there's nothing in the foreseeable forecast, but we're still not out of the woods yet until the 1st of November. So hopefully that, all these conditions, we start to get some cooler fall weather, and people's attitudes are good and get out and do some things within reason. And as always, we try to encourage people not to overspend. That's easy to do with over $4 fuel and ryegrass that's going to cost you over $200 an acre. Plant only your high spots. The areas that are going to drain well. Make sure your drainage is in order, because here in this part of the state, and as we move south, there's a lot of cattle people that rotate cattle on rice ground, and they'll fly in some ryegrass seed, which is a added plane trip of about $7 to $10 an acre, depending on the aerial applicator. So be cost conscious about what you got going on and managing your ryegrass crop this fall, because it's going to be quite costly as we move forward. So with that being said, I just want to touch on Master Cattleman. We currently have a Master Cattleman registration open for Central Louisiana. That program will be held in Ville Platte at the Chauncey Pete Multipurpose Building at 1204 Chauncey Pete Road, Ville Platte, Louisiana. We currently have that registration open until September the 28th. We have a considerable amount of interest in it with some registrations in already. I think we'll have a full slate of people attending this particular program. So, but if you have an interest in that, we certainly would want to get your attention and get the forms that you needed filled out to participate with that. So, Ashley, that's about all I have at this time. Just moving forward, I think if we can have a reasonably good fall moving into the winter months, I think things will be pretty good if we can watch our expenses on our winter feeding period.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to need you to knock on wood because I feel like you might have just jinxed us on a hurricane saying there's none in the future, but we're all going to pray that it holds out and we did not just get jinxed there. Vince, you may have said this and I may have missed it. Do you have a limitation on the number of people for Master Cattlemen, or can you take a pretty good sized crowd?
We can take 30 to 35 comfortably, and we counted, we have about 12 to 15 that are registered at this point. But with most registration periods coming to an end, we usually have an influx right the last few days. So I feel like we'll have 20 at minimum.
All right, thank you, sir. And regarding to Vince's beef brunch from last week, I am still working on the edits for that. It does take a little bit to get the transcript edits up and done. So that recording will be posted sometime this week. It has not been yet, but we will get that up and out to you. It'll be on our YouTube channel, LSU Ag Center Livestock, where you see these videos if you watch them there. I'll put it in podcast form, and then you can always go to lsuagcenter.com/beef brunch, and you can find them there as well. So I am still working on that. I haven't forgotten it. I know we've had several people that have asked about it. We will be getting that out to you shortly. Lee, do you mind going ahead and doing our update for the Northwest region, please?
Thank you, Ashley. I'm glad to be with you all here today and echo some of what Vince said. This weather has changed once again from the last time we visited. Rain's tapered off. It's turned hot and dry. The next 7 days just looks a little unbelievable, I guess you would say. One local channel had the high pushing up into near 99 for later in the week up in Shreveport. And that's hard to believe here, knocking on October's door in middle late part of September, touching 99. But I guess it's not unheard of. And we were talking before we got on this call about the fact that the dry conditions are already starting to pop back up in places. The analogy I use with Vince is the Bahia grass. You look around in some yards and even in some pastures, it's started to take on that kind of blue-gray look to it that you see when it gets drought stressed. But in the last 10 days, the amount of hay that's been made in this country is unbelievable. People started right at towards the tail end of the rain chances about 10 days ago and started laying hay down and just have not stopped. And I would say that most everybody, barring major mechanical failures, has gotten close to being caught up, except for some big operators who have a lot of ground to cover. Most everybody like us on the smaller side has pretty well caught up on their hay fields. And we were talking before we started recording here that there's a lot of folks that have some extra ground that they probably could cut, some pastures maybe that have some excessive growth that they're kind of considering now, trying to weigh their options, wondering what's going to happen if we drop back into a droughty type period, whether they need to save that grass for their cattle herd or if they're going to have to remove it. One thing that goes into this equation is this ryegrass planting time. And with the amount of rain we received in the last few weeks and the amount of overburden or thatch or grass growth that we see from these warm season grasses, people got to find a way to mitigate it when they're talking about either drilling, sod seeding, overseeding this ryegrass, whatever method they're going to use, even if they go with a prepared seed bed and try to rip that ground up. When you've got quite a bit of Bahia grass or Bermuda grass kind of piled on top on that ground, you know that you're not going to get as good seed to soil contact is what you really want. So people are trying to work on that, trying to get the plans in place, whether they need to cut some hay on some ryegrass ground and bale it, or bush hog it close if that'll suffice, or maybe even use some chemical control methods to ding some of this summer grasses back to get it ready to drill into. Uh, but lots of hay being made around here. It's significantly eased the minds of many producers that were right on the cusp of having enough hay for this winter feeding season, and all they needed was one good rain, and we got a heck of a one, and they were able to make some hay and put them over that threshold. I want to make quick mention of the fact that we're still taking entries on our state fair hay quality contest. If you're interested in that, I know that a lot of the hay that's been made is like what Vince stated, is overly mature hay that should have been cut quite a while back. But it's not all of it. I've visited with several producers um, that had put up some really high quality, fairly young, immature hay in the last week that they'll probably test out pretty good. We're going to be getting some samples sent out on that. And so if you're interested in that, get in contact with us. We'll give you all the information on how to get your entries in. Deadline coming up is October 1 on those entries being in. So get with any one of us and we'll point you in the right direction. Like I said, the pastures have a lot of grass. I'm going to say it until it's not the case, but it's rare to see this much grass in these pastures in this country this time of year. Most everybody, everywhere you go to, has plenty of grass in these grazing pastures. Hadn't run into problems yet. Now this forecast, these mid to high 90s and no rain in sight for us up here, it's gonna spell some trouble, but that trouble's a week or two away, if that. And my goodness, when you're talking about an average first frost date of October 15th up this way, um, we're bumping pretty close on some significantly cooler temperatures, and a time whenever we're used to these summer grasses kind of ebbing back anyway. Um, some folks are planting some ryegrass right now. I've talked to one or two producers that are getting some in the ground. They might be jumping the gun just a tad. Sure. My heart goes out to anybody that jumped the gun and got some planted even last week and may have some emergence during this week. They're going to run into some significant problems with this heat being what it is. Some cattle being worked, especially in the last week or two. I wouldn't say a whole lot up in this part of the country because everybody had hay on their minds and been breathing and eating and sleeping hay production. So I'd say cattle working's taking a back seat to that. But I've talked to a couple of folks that have snuck in some what we would consider fall works on the cow herd, some of those herd health management uh, 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 processes we have to undertake in the fall. The temperatures have been fairly monitored. It's been very nice as far as the humidity up until this weekend when it really started to go back to our traditional summer weather pattern. But there were some cows worked. Horn fly is terrible. I mean, same as in Vince's country, people throwing everything at them but the kitchen sink. Just switching ingredients, trying different products, methods, back rubbers, pouring it on, pinning cattle and running it through a sprayer on them. You name it, they're doing it right now. And it's just short term right now, folks. It's just not getting a lot of relief off of anything as far as these flies go. There have been some calves being marketed, and I know Jason's on a well-deserved break from us there. I know Ashley's probably got a little bit on markets, but I'm going to touch on just a couple of high points, and maybe this fits in with what she has. Um, Last week we saw our cattle futures both on live and fat cattle kind of mixed, and most of it was centered around some USDA reports on grain yields, specifically corn yields. They dropped the estimate significantly, and which caused corn to just skyrocket, and that's what drove a lot of the mix to lower futures markets in cattle. But I was wrong on something. I sure expected to see some cash prices at local sale barns drop because of it, and that wasn't the case. These prices were steady to firm. on these cattle at local sale barns. So I think what that's a product of is more of the recognition in the industry of the fact that we're short on calves. All these cattle that have been weaned prematurely that went out due to drought, mainly in Texas, but also in Louisiana. There's a lot of calves in Northwest Louisiana that got weaned early and got marketed early due to the dry conditions. And I think some folks are recognizing that these calves for this fall are not as there's not as many of them out there as what there normally is mid-September. Um, and so slaughter was up last week. If you look at those numbers, that may be one Ashley's going to report on here in just a minute. But slaughter was up very good year on year. And also exports are looking good. So we got several things working in our favors, folks. If we can just get everybody in the room to sit down at the same table and get the pot just right, well, I think we've got the ingredients for a pretty stout market if we can hold it all together. Just as a reminder, we're currently signing up for our cattle pregnancy determination clinics. Those are one-day events going to be held here at the Hill Farm Research Station on either October the 18th or 20th. You can pick your date. I can tell you that the October 20th date is Thursday and it's almost full. We have just a couple of spots on that. A few more spots left available on that Tuesday date. So if you're interested on that and learning more about how to determine pregnancy in your cattle herd, get in contact with us. I think Ashley's got the flyer and all that, or contact any one of us. We'll get you fixed up on that and get you signed up on it. And the final thing, I'm going to wrap this up and before I turn it back over to Ashley, is I just wanted to call attention to a purebred sales going to be happening on October the 15th. You know, in Louisiana, we've got some excellent purebred breeds. Pretty much every kind of breed of cattle that you're needing for this commercial operation, if you're looking for that bull to fit right in and go to work in your herd or replacement females, you can find them in Louisiana. We've got a great group of purebred breeders in many different breeds scattered out through the state that are selling bulls, selling heifers, so on and so forth. So anytime I get a chance, especially to showcase one in Northwest Louisiana, particularly, I'm going to do it. And so Dixie Farms Angus is having a sale on Saturday, October the 15th. It's going to be at the Red River Livestock Auction Complex down there in Coshada. They're going to be selling over 65 bulls, 18 months to 2 years old, I believe, and they're going to be selling quite a few replacement type heifers. So if you want any more information on it, reach out to me. I'll point you in the right direction. Dixie Farms Angus is the name of the outfit out there from Gloucester. So if you have any questions on that, just let me know. And Ashley, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, sir. And for the Northeast region, I think that Jason would pretty much just echo everything that both Lee and Vince have said in terms of management reminders as well as our forage quality. I know I'm ready for some fall weather. I'm glad everybody's getting hay cut. I know we needed it, but my heart was a little sad when I saw we were going to be hitting 98 degrees again up through the week. So also just on the markets, I do have a very abbreviated market for y'all this week. So to finish up, last week in the 5-area feeding region, as Lee said, everything was doing really well, I guess, in terms of holding pretty steady. But in the 5-area feeding region, Fed steer negotiated cash sales ranged 141.61 to 143.64, and that was on just a little over 59,000 head. Your 5 and 6 weight steers, mediums and large, 1s and 2s, sold from 155 to 177. And then your 7 to 8 weight feeder steers were medium large 1s and 2s, sold from 164 to 174. Your lean cull cows were about 67 to 70. And then your choice cutout for the week averaged about 254.76, which was just a small $4.51 decrease from a week ago. That did leave the choice select spread at 23.55 for the week. Both Vince and Lee did touch on a good bit of our events that we have coming up. So Vince mentioned his Master Cattleman class there in the Central region. I do have that link in the video and podcast descriptions. Again, I'm working on his beef brunch from last week, and hopefully that'll be up at some point this week. We'll get it sent out via email and social media. For October's Beef Brunch webinar, we'll have Bradley Pousson, who's one of our agents in the Southwest region. He's going to be speaking on disaster preparedness and recovery. That's going to be on Tuesday, October 11th. The live event will be Tuesday, October 11th at 10:30 a.m. Again, you can find that on lsuagcenter.com/beef brunch. We have an artificial insemination course for producers that's going to be held at Dean Lee Research Station and an Extension Center there in Alexandria. That is going to be October 12th through the 14th. We'll go from 9 to 5 daily for that. Registration is $150 per person, and we do have to limit attendance to 20 registrations. So we just simply do not have the physical space or the cows to hold any more than 20 registrations. So if you're interested in that, I have all the contact information, registration information in the video and podcast description. But please go ahead if you're interested and reach out and register for that. I don't know how many spots we have that have already been taken, but registration is open for it. Again, Lee mentioned our pregnancy determination clinic, so I have that information posted as well. That will be October 18th and or October 20th. Then the fall Acadiana Beef and Forage Field Day will be the evening of Thursday, October 27th. I believe that's going to be starting at 5 p.m. We don't have a flyer out for that just yet, but it will be at the Vermilion Parish Extension Office, and Andrew Granger is going to be your contact for that, so I do have his email posted. I believe that's got us all through, at least through October in terms of events. I know a lot of our exhibitors are gearing up for the state fair and all the state parish shows. All the fall parish shows. So we want to go ahead and wish luck to all of our exhibitors that are working hard on their projects there. I should comment as well, I forgot, on the Northeast region. We did have our field day last Thursday, and there was a very good turnout. We had wonderful weather for it, had a good turnout, and we really appreciate all the speakers from both the Ag Center and the industry that came and were able to speak to that. So with that, I think that's all that we have for you today. I want to thank y'all again for joining us and listening to us, and we will be back with y'all in just a couple of weeks.